Alright, so in this video I'll be showing you how to create a dynamic block. This is for those of you who use Rhino for your architectural drafting. This is going to be a two-dimensional tutorial. I'll show you how to create this dynamic door where you can change the angle at which it rotates or it swings open. We also have the wall depth depending on what you pick, and we also have the different options of the way that it swings. So I'll be going over all of these in detail, so you can learn a little bit more about how parametric design is used and how you can use it for anything. This is, like I said, a two-dimensional tutorial. So you can also use any line segment. So let's say this, we can set one curve and we can override that curve. And you could use any line segment inside of your architectural drawing to create a door that is perfectly accurate and it's fully parametric. So with that being said, thank you very much for being here. Hopefully you're excited to learn a little bit more, and let's jump right into the tutorial. Alright, so the first thing I'll be doing in this tutorial is creating the base geometry. So it's going to be a bit of a different tutorial, but let me show you what we'll be doing. So first, creating the geometry of where the door is going to go. So we'll go to 120 here. We'll offset this by a typical dimension, so 3.5. And so this is the depth of a wall. So I'll create a center line and offset this by 3 feet. And then I'll take these two line segments and trim them to create a wall segment. Now I'm keeping this pretty simple here. The cool thing about this is we'll be able to apply it to any type of door or any type of wall depth. So if we move this over here, copy it, and then we scale this in one dimension and make this 5.5 or 6 inches or whatever size door opening, I'll show you how we can also apply it to this one. So what we need to do now is create the line segment. So I'll go to a line segment. And it doesn't matter in which way you create it because we'll have the option to change the direction for this. So we have this line segment. We'll go here into Grasshopper and bring it in. So we'll bring in a curve component. This is an empty curve component that we can apply this line segment to. So I'll select it here inside of the Rhino viewport. I'll go here to Grasshopper, right click on it and go to set one curve. The way that we know that's been applied is when you select it here, you'll see it turn green here. Once we have this, now we can hide. So I'll select it, go to Control H or hide it, and now we can get started with the script. So first thing we need to do is bring in an offset component. We'll bring in this curve into the offset curve. And now we're going to offset it by the depth of the wall. So for this one, it's 3.5. So I'll go to 3.500. And since we're doing it from the middle, now I need to offset it by half of 3.5. So we'll do 3.5 divided by 2. This is in the positive direction. Now we'll be copying this offset curve and bring in a negative component so we can offset it in the opposite direction as well. Now we can even hide this curve input. Next, we'll be creating the door frame first. So what we'll do is we'll take this line segment and this line segment, bring in the endpoints. So we have the endpoints for this one, the start and the start and end for the next one. Now we need to create a line segment between these two. So we'll go to line segment between the start of this one and the start of this one. This will create a line segment here. And the same thing with the other side by plugging in the endpoint and the endpoint, creating this line segment. Now we can offset this curve. Notice that it's offsetting in the opposite direction, so we can do two things. Either offset it in the negative direction or flip these two. So we'll actually make this endpoint be the start and this endpoint be the end. And we'll give it a slider. So this is going to be the door frame. So we'll do 0.5 on this side and then offset it as well here for the next one. So this one was organized correctly to where it offsets to the inside. So now with this, we can close these two to create a rectangle. So let's go here to endpoints for this one, which we already have with this. But since we recreated this start and end, we can either get the endpoints of this or use the start and start points. But I think this is a little bit better organized. So we have both of these, the start and end, and now we're going to connect the start and the start, and then the end and the end. Now there's different ways we could do this, like I said, but this keeps it a little bit more simple in the sense that we have these two connected, and now these two connected. And now we'll do the same thing to the next one, but what we do need to do is join these together into a closed polyline. So we'll bring in join curves, and holding down shift, I'll add the two connecting lines, the original line that we offset, holding down shift, and then this one that we offset for the door frame. Now we'll take these, copy them down. So slide it down, tap Alt, and I'll bring in this line segment into the first curve and this line segment into the next curve. This will create the frame for this side. What we do need to do is flatten the inputs. But notice that we do need to change the inputs for the join curves because we have this one, and we need to override it with. So let's unplug everything here, disconnect all, and plug them all in again here using the correct inputs. So holding down shift, we're adding more line segments to create that rectangle. So far we've created the door frame, and we can change the size of that here if we want to. That's also going to depend on your manufacturer. Typically, you would actually bring this out here, and that would create the rough opening. But since we're just using this to draft, this is just going to give us a little bit more detail. So when we create the door, all of this information will be, brought into the design. Now, what we need to do is create the door. Now for the door, let me show you what we're going to do. Is here we have the start and end points, and here we have the start and end points. Notice that we have both of these, and what we want to do is take the line segment or create a line segment from this point to this point. We can also create it here, but we only need to do it to one side. And once we do it to one side, then we can create the ability to rotate it and create all of the different options that you would need for a door. So let's go here to a line segment. We'll go here to endpoint and endpoint. And it's actually going to be the endpoint and then this endpoint. Or it's going to be the start point, I think, of this one. There you go. So depending on how you have it organized, on mine, it's going to be the endpoint of this one, and then the start point of this one. And the reason why is because the way that this was organized for you to offset it to the inside, it's going to have this be organized different than this one. So you just have to make sure that you have the line segment starting on the inside of the frame and ending on the inside of this side of the frame. Now we're going to offset this to create the door depth. And depending on the door size, for me, it's going to be 1.75. And so we have the original line segment between those two. We have the door. And now we need to join those together using this same technique where we get the endpoints and the line segments. So we'll copy this over because what it does is create the endpoints for this line, the endpoints for this line, and create the two connecting line segments. Now we can do that again if we wanted to, just by bringing in these endpoints and connecting the start and endpoints. And now we can join this to create the door. So we'll start with this line segment and then holding down Shift, adding the rest of the line segments. Now this is more under the category of creating blocks for drafting. So just be aware of that. You can also extrude this into 3D, but for now we're just keeping it here in a 2D, kind of the 2D realm. Next, we're going to rotate this door to open it up. So we no longer need these. Let's see, we no longer need these two to be shown. We no longer need the original line segments here. Now we have the door, so this is where we're at. Now we need to figure out which point we want to rotate about. Now typically it's going to be clockwise. So I think if we use this one, it'll be a positive angle. So let's try that out. Let's go to our endpoints here. So we have the door endpoints. Here we have the start and endpoint. That's the one we want to use. So we'll rotate. So bring in the rotate component. We need one of these 2 points to create the rotation plane and the location of where it's going to rotate. And now I'll use this curve as the geometry input. And notice that it rotates it open. We can also pick the angle. So let's change this angle input to degrees. And then go here to 0, less than 45, less than 90. And another thing that we could do here is when you right click here, you can go to an edit snapping and you could do 45. The snapping will be 0, 45, and 90. And what's cool about this is it'll give you these little dots that it snaps to. So it's a lot easier to be precise. So this is a really good technique, not just for this script, but just in general. All right, so that's our rotation. So now we can close it 45 or do a 90 degree. So let's hide the door and let's hide these inputs. So the door is dependent on how much we offset this as well. So the more we offset the frame, the smaller the door gets. So everything is dependent on each other for it to be updated. Next, we need to create the swing of the door. So what we'll do is first get the start point. So the start point is going to be that same start point. I will actually extract it from this component so we know that this is the the 1. Then we also need the endpoint, which is here. So I'll copy this down and actually add the endpoint. And now we'll rotate this around one more time. So this is going to be for the door. And we're going to rotate this 90 degrees for the endpoint. So now we have the start, we have the endpoint, and we're going to do that one more time. But this time, take 90 degrees and divide it by 2. And you'll see why. So we have the start of the arc, the middle, and the end. And now we can do an arc, 3 points. We have the original one, which is this one, where it starts. With this one, where it starts. It's point A. B, which is the one in the middle. And C, which is the one for the end. So this geometry is actually going to be, oh, so that's for the door. And then this one is for 90, so this is going to be the last one. Next, we'll take this arc and bring in an extend curve. This way, we can leave the door swing there, but I do like to extend it a little bit to show that that's not necessarily part of the door. So I'll bring this arc into the curve input and then extend it by 2.5 or whatever dimension you would like. So I'll go to the end as 2.5, and then the start, I'll right click, go to set number, and I'll go to 0. So now this extends it. Now when you extend something, there are different ways that you can do it. So type, you can do arc, smooth. In this case, we'll do arc. Typically do about 2 to 2.5 extension. And so this angle will always stay there, and the extension will always stay there as well. So now let's go back and hide some of these points that we don't necessarily need right now. So we could visualize it a little bit better. And so now that we have this at this point, all we need to do is rotate it and mirror it around to have all of the different options. So that's what we'll be going over next. All right, so if we take a look back here at the start of the script, we have that base curve. So what we need to do is use this to mirror it to the other side, but also with the same one, we need to get the midpoint. So let's go here to the midpoint of this curve. Then rotate this original line segment using this midpoint as the plane, the line segment as the geometry, and then the angle here, it's going to by default be 0.5 of pi, but we can also change it using degrees and then using 90 as a number here. So now that we have these two, we're going to use a curve component. Now we could just bring this whole script, part of the script, all the way to the back, but I'm going to just reroute it through this component, an empty curve component. Now we have both the original curve, which is this one, and the rotated one. I'm going to wire display hidden, or just hide the wire display so it doesn't overlap with everything. And we'll bring it all the way back here. Now we're going to take this door and the rotation portion of it, and we're going to mirror it. So first, let's organize it and bring both of these through an empty curve component. We'll use this for the door and this for the other portion, or the swing portion of it. Now we're going to mirror this. So let's go to mirror component. So first we'll use, instead of using mirror plane, we're actually going to use mirror curve. So this is going to be a two-dimensional mirror using the curve input. So now we'll go to the rotated one first as the curve input, and then we're going to mirror the door, and then we'll copy this again and mirror the swing portion of it. Now we can copy these two curve components and we can plug in the new mirrored curves into those. Now we're going to be doing the same thing, but we're going to be mirroring it relative to the original curve, which is in the center. So for that one and for this one. And we're going to be doing that one more time, but this time, so we'll copy this over and using these two as the inputs. And then using, so now we have all of those because we used the same mirror line segment. So we have the original two, the ones that we mirrored to the other side, the ones that we mirrored to the other side relative to the original, and then the mirrored ones that we had mirrored already to the other side. So at this point, it gets a little bit messy, but let's hide the wire display on some of these. And I'll show you how we can organize this so we can select the different options we have here. So we have already too many options, but let's organize those. So now we'll go here to a curve component. And now we'll plug in just the door for all of these. So just the door for this one. We'll start with the top one, with the original one. Holding down Shift, we're going to add the other one. So the one that we mirrored. Then the one from the mirrored side on the opposite side, and then the one that we mirrored again. We will flatten the input, and we'll do that again, making sure that we do the same order for the swing portion of it. So now we'll copy this over, and we'll start with this one. Then we'll go with this one, holding down Shift, then to this swing portion, and then this swing portion. I'll hide the wire display for this portion. And now we're going to use list item. So list item to pick one of those, because we have all of those in here. But if we plug that into the list item, it's just going to pick one of them. Now, here's the thing. We do need to make sure that we flatten the input for the door for the join curves, so it looks at it as one closed polyline. And the swing is already an arc, so that's a single polyline. Okay, so now it should be working here. So we have one door, and if we go to list item, we'll go 0 less than 3. Now we can pick from 1, so 0 is going to be 1, then 2, 3, 4. So notice that we can cycle now through these. Now we can take this and copy it down and then plug in the swing portion of it. So now here, if we select these two, we can pick them individually by switching the location of where they are. And all we need to do is hide the input for everything, including this rotated portion. And now, just using this slider, we can pick the location of where we want the door. So that's why it's a little bit confusing here when we're plugging all of the different options into one. But then what we do is we make sure that we plug in the curves organized in the right way, so that way we can pick just the individual door and the door swing individually. Now here's another trick. We're using from 0 to 3, but we can also do a list, value list. And then here we can just say, if we double click on the value list, we can say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then here for 1, this is going to equal 0, 1, we'll just do 2, and 3. Let's get rid of the spaces in between. So 1 is equal to 0, which we know that 0 is 1. So now here, all we need to do is pick from this list that we created. So 2 is going to be that other location. And so this is a different way that we can rotate where our door is located. Now let's go back here and organize this a little bit, because some of the inputs here are overlapping. So I do like to hide the wire display once I already have most of the script completed. And you can always select the component and see where things are going. So that's not that big of a deal. But we do want to make sure we have clarity in the terms of not having too many wires overlapping. So I'm hiding some of these. This one as well. This is okay. All right, so for the door location, so we have the original line segment. Now we can always go here, create a different line segment here, go to set one curve. Notice that it created it here, but now this door has to be 5.5, so we can change this to 5.5, and everything will update. And if we want a different door location, we can always go back here and change where the swing happens. Now, similarly to what we did before, is we can go here and right click, go to edit snapping, and we could do 3.5 and then 5.5 and have those snapping points, which makes it easy for you to change the size of where the door is. So this is going to be wall depth. This is going to be set one curve. This is going to be frame size. I do like to group it so you can see which ones change. This is going to be door depth. This is door angle. The extension. Then at the end here, I will go create a curve component that's empty so I can plug the outputs into these. And this is going to be the door. And this is going to be the swing. And we can also put those together. Door all. So now we can hide these two, and we could just have this be the output. So there's door, this door swing, and then we also need to bring the frame. So these two. I notice this one's not flattened, so we do need to flatten this one as well. So both of these are closed polyline. We'll hide the wire display, and then this is going to be the frame. And then holding down Shift, I'll add this to the door all. So once again, we can always, actually, let's group this one. We can always do this. Type in show, bring this one, set one curve. And so let's open up a floor plan and I'll show you how fast we can create two-dimensional doors that are perfectly aligned to basically perfectly aligned and easy to be able to create and change the size accordingly. We can also just change this as well. So let me show you that. So this is a project template that I have, and I already have some doors on this one, but let's pretend like there were no doors here. So let's move this one over here. Let's move this one over here. And then bring in a line segment. So let's go here to a line segment. Now that we have, let's say we would just create all the line segments at once, and we can take this and now go here to set one curve. Now we know that that's not the location where we want it, so we'll switch that to 2. And then we can take this and bake it. Then we can go to this one. Go to set one curve. We know that this is a 3.5 wall, and then we can pick the rotation or where it's located and then bake it. So notice that now that's all I had to do is now I can just hide the script here. That's all I had to do. Now all I can need to do is take the door and then match properties to the line segments that I had before. And then I can delete those. So this gives me a really quick way to create the doors. But I do want to do one last thing that I want to show you. All right, so I already have the script ready here. You'll see it. And let's go to F. Let's see here. Whoops. Let's create a line segment for the size of the door, so 3 feet. We'll use this as the input. And I already have this script saved. So what I'll do is I'll save it again, but this time save it as a cluster. So I'll have 2 different versions if you want to download this. This version what we're going to do is take this whole script and we're going to simplify it with the inputs and the outputs. This way, you don't have to look at the whole script. We're just going to simplify the whole thing. So first, I'll double click on this curve because on the output of this curve, because this is where everything happens. And we're going to be moving the inputs to the left. And so we're going to be taking the frame size all the way over here. We can also select them, this, and select these, and then go to the left-hand side. So if you go to this arrow on the left, they're all going to be moved to the left here. Now this value list is going to be options. So first thing first is the set one curve. So that's where the door is located. I'll double click on the output again and create a relay. The way that the cluster is going to be made is depending on the order of the outputs of the sliders and the inputs of the final result here. So let me show you what I mean. Depending on how we have it organized from top to bottom, that's how the cluster will be organized. So we need to make sure that we have things organized in the right way. So door depth is the most important thing after the curve input. Then the door angle, that's next. So I'll create relays here to organize the inputs or the outputs here. So frame size, that's next. Swing extension. And I actually think that the depths should be next to each other. Then the angle for the door, the frame size, and then the extension. And then the option might be right after the curve input. So we can always change these, but for now, this kind of makes sense to me. Next, we're going to hide everything else except for the outputs. And then we'll create a relay for the door, for the swing, and then for the frame. Here, I'll disable the hidden wire. So wire display default. And now we're going to select everything between this relay and this set of relays. So we'll select everything from left to right. And all of that is going to be inside of the cluster. So once we have that selected, middle click, and then we're going to go to this top option called cluster. And notice that everything that was in between those is now inside of this component type design. And when you double click inside, you'll see that everything that we had before is still here. It's just simplified between the inputs and the outputs. So now when we create a door, now we don't have to look at that whole script. All we need to look at is this. The other thing is when you bake this, these are all going to be separate items. So I do like to sometimes group them. So if you go to a group component, plug all of those into the geometry and then flatten the input. When you bake this, it's actually going to bake as a group. So that simplifies things once you bring it into your designs. And then I'll group this and show this as a group. So let's organize this again. So now I can ungroup these. Now these I do want them so I can see what they're labeled, but the inputs are not as critical to now put into groups because we know that these are the only inputs that we need. So I'll select all of this, go to this align evenly, and then go to a left-hand side align. And then lastly, what I'd like to do is the largest slider that I have, I'll bring it all the way to one of these grid lines, and then I'll extend them all to be the same length. It's just a small part of organizing it, but I think it looks a lot better. And then these can now be aligned to the right, and then this one's going to be set one curve. So with this cluster, now we have a dynamic block where we can change the different options. We can change the size, we can change the location. So this is just for one door. If you want to see one for a double door or for a sliding glass door or for something else, let me know. I can probably do a tutorial for that. But for now, I just wanted to show you how you can create a dynamic block where you can change all of your inputs and create a better output for your designs.